Hello, this is Idis Tufekcioglu and happy Friday. This is OnBase VOGUE HealthCare podcast, and my guest today is going to be Ryan Wakefield from Carle Foundation Health. So we will be talking about monitoring your OnBase solution on today's podcast. So let's get started. So can you tell us a little bit about the team structure over there? Like, are you only one person in the team? Do you have a large OnBase team? Just maybe and after that we can get into some of the key projects maybe you guys worked within the last 12 months. We'll talk about those real quick.
Yeah. So I am actually part of a team of 8. So there are 8 of us on the team now. I will say I am not pure OnBase. There are a total of 3 of us on this team of 8 that are certified for OnBase. One of us is fully dedicated to OnBase. The other 2 are kind of part OnBase, part of the programs. So between the 8 of us, we support over 400 different software between Carle and our sister insurance company, Health Alliance. So we support anything and everything between the 2 systems. And like an example for me, I not only support OnBase, but I also support the infusion pump integration software to our Epic EMR.
Interesting. So I do see that actually quite often. A lot of the teams that I personally worked on myself, there was specifically either one OnBase person or one OnBase team, a small team. But I've also seen other health organizations having a larger team, but OnBase being one of the applications that they're supporting, but they're supporting other applications as well.
Yep.
So is anybody want to chime in from the participants what their team structure is like? Are they kind of seeing the same thing? Are they like maybe a one-man show in terms of OnBase, or are they from a larger group and they support OnBase and maybe other applications all within the same team? Anybody want to chime in from the participants? Would love to hear that too.
Yeah, feel free to type it into the chat panel or kind of how you feel about it. But yeah, it's kind of an interesting situation, especially when Martha says she's a team of 1. So it's an interesting situation when you get into these different team structures and how if you're a team of 1, that can be difficult in itself. Or if you're like me, where I support multiple different software, you really start to realize your limitations and you start to understand where you can go with things. Like Wanda, she said, ProMedica, HealthCare, she's got 3 full-time, 1 part-time. That's pretty big. The team of 7 with Solomon.
Solomon says team of 7. Wow. Okay.
Wow. Trust me, I would love to have that. I would absolutely love to have that. But it's interesting, and it really kind of comes down to OnBase. And as you start to as you start to educate management. Oh wow, we got Elias with team of 8, support 5 to 6 apps, so it's not too bad, pretty good there. But the biggest thing with education with a lot of this is you start to educate the management on what your OnBase solution really is, what it entails, why sometimes it may be difficult to be across multiple applications. And so that's kind of been an interesting transition to start work with. Alan here is saying he's the primary OnBase, but 4-person team. They also support non-Epic apps, and Chris is a team of 2. And oh wow, they also handle Epic HIM, identity security, and 3M. Wow. That's
basically what I've seen. That just basically a lot of the areas, like as Chris is saying, he's a team of 2. They're a team of 2, but they handle Epic HIM, identity security, and 3M. And that is a very typical setup. And a lot of the places I worked at, going in as an OnBase, and the first thing they would ask me, "Oh, are you Epic knowledge or certified as well? Because we'll want to do some OnBase stuff. But hey, it would be nice to have somebody to be able to answer some of our 3M integration questions, or something similar, or just, hey, I have this release of information module that I'm waiting for and just need to see how I can import my requesters into the HIM database." So yes, they do, those type of questions come up. So, and Solomon says supporting 14 hospitals. That's a large number.
That's a feat in itself.
Yes. So I don't know if Solomon, if you feel comfortable about talking, and we would like to hear from you in terms of, you said 14 hospitals, which hospital system it is, and maybe if you would like to speak with a few minutes, we'd be happy to hear, and including everybody else who commented. Please write in the chat field if you have any trouble unmuting yourself or something like that, or your audio doesn't seem to work. Please do let me know, and just chime in anytime for that as well. And Randall Daniels is saying they're a team of 7, 2 contractors, Epic HIM, OnBase contracts management, OnBase suite at Houston Methodist. So that's really interesting too, because now we have folks who work in the healthcare, and most of those guys I think have Epic EMR integration pieces. But then what about your contracts management module? If you're integrating with, if you have some app enabler and then you're integrating with another application that we've never even heard of maybe. So those are really interesting environments to work in, and it's just amazing that to see where a lot of people have different team dynamics. So just maybe let's go back to the conversation a little bit. Ryan, can you tell us, do you have that type of environment where are you more like an Epic integration shop, or do you have HR or contract management modules that you guys are supporting as part of your OnBase solution as well?
So we definitely are primarily medical. However, we are in our accounts payable, also with our financial services, which is kind of medical. So patient financial services, and all that, dealing with obviously medical bills. But we do have accounts payable. So they've been on it since nearly the start. But we just recently went live with our HR I think it's been about a year and a half now, year and a half to 2 years. So we got our HR. There's talks about other areas to expand into, but as you know, with it when things come, it's trying to manage all of that, making sure you're not stretching yourself super thin. And honestly, with all, as I'm seeing everyone kind of saying how big their teams are and how many places they're supporting, like Solomon said, 14, that's where this topic about monitoring your solution really kind of comes into a big play. And it really is an important key piece that, well, don't get me wrong, Highland has options and there are other options out there, but the question really is, how do you use those options? Or are there ones that you're not thinking of? And that's where seeing all these replies, I'm very grateful to be, discussing this topic with you and everyone else to really help them, because, as most people, may see, as I love to help. So I'm hoping, to be able to get a lot of good things out of this today.
Oh, thank you. And again, just anybody would want to unmute themselves, feel free to chime into the conversation. I do some familiar names here. I'm just going to go ahead and read some of the other OnBase administrators commented out. Cheryl says, from South Coast, I am the only certified OnBase admin, have one person helping me. We also support HIM, Epic Apps, and RightFacts. Yes, RightFacts is another one. Yes, RightFacts is another one.
Don't even get me started on that. I co-support that. I am the primary support on that as well. So, that is another beast in itself. So that's another discussion that could be happening.
One of the other places that I worked on, I was able to pawn off the RightFacts part of it to some other like Epic, some type of an integration, Epic client team. So I got lucky with that. But yes, you may not be lucky every single time. Yes. Angel from Denver Health has a team of 3 dedicated to OnBase. So that's a really good. I'll just ask Angel actually, how many hospitals they're supporting.
Yeah, and Alan, I see you mentioned, kind of some experiences. Definitely would love to, give some experiences on things. I think, obviously, for being respectful of time and everything for today's discussion, we can probably work on discussing that outside of here, but definitely would kind of love to talk about that, because RightFacts in itself, and especially the integration to OnBase, it can be a very, very difficult beast to handle. So what everyone, just so they'll be aware, I am actually putting in my contact information if you would like to reach out to me post this meeting, and obviously, that way, if you want to talk about some of these pieces or dig into a little farther, or whatever, I'll have that at the end of the today's slideshow that I'm going to present. But yeah, it's definitely, RightFacts is a definite interesting beast to handle when it comes to this whole OnBase aspect. Now,
Soden says we integrate with RightFacts with OnBase. It works very well. I'm glad somebody got it to working really well. So it's crazy, but yeah, thank you for that. So Angel says we have 18 school-based clinics and 6 community facilities.
Toy says he has 3 hospitals and 400 plus ambulatory sites. Yeah, it's interesting, and again, these are good pieces that everyone's bringing up here, because like you and I have kind of found out, and from your contracting, and I know from my work, the monitoring of your OnBase solution, and honestly even other solutions, is key. I mean, if you have an integration between RightFacts and OnBase, and you have that running, and all of a sudden something goes down, you need to know what's going on.
Yeah, so Ryan, let's dive into that a little bit. Can you maybe share some information with us, maybe slides or whatever you might have, or some verbiage around what are some things are you doing for monitoring your OnBase solution? Are you do OnBase? Do you use Highland tools, non-Highland tools that are kind of industry standard? What are some of the things are you doing? So let's just go over those a little bit, please.
Yeah, so one thing I want to kind of make just a side little mention here, while we do obviously understand this is being advertised as a podcast, we are aware it is not a true literal podcast in this sense right now. The main reason behind that.
We will get to that too.
We'll get to that.
That will happen too. This is warm up right now.
Oh yeah, we're working on it, but just because of the nature of the information being covered, and because we have to just figure out hosting situations. So just so everyone's aware, initially these are just kind of going to be little recordings that we'll do here and do the best we can, but we are hoping to work with Highland to make it a true podcast that you can drive to work and sit there, or well, obviously we're practicing social distancing right now, sit in your office at your desk. So we'll definitely kind of be aware. But yeah, so we're going to kind of go at an interesting approach to this here today. And the way approach that I want to take it is I want to approach it from a kind of a tiered level. I want to give simple ways to help to monitor your solution. Then we'll get a couple intermediate, and then there is a more advanced way. And so we'll dive into each one of those and make sure that we are really well aware of what is, out there. So honestly, to kind of start off here, is a simple way is honestly just simply making sure to set your Windows services to restart automatically. What's funny is when OnBase installs itself, these services are not always meant to restart automatically. And so something very key that would help in making sure your system is up is, let's say a service fails. Well, if the service fails and you don't have any of this set up, it's going to be down and you're going to have no clue. So a very simple way is to simply set these all up to restart a service. And so that basically means is, oh, I crashed. Okay, I need to try to restart. And so typically what I would recommend personally, and again, is this kind of it's kind of, company dependent. Obviously each company is different, so you have different requirements. But most of the time what I recommend doing is setting the first failure and second failure to restart the service. That way you are keeping those as just the straightforward way. So with that being said, some places you may not want to run a program. You may want to actually restart the service and just say constantly try to restart. So if you constantly try to restart, then you may never know. And so that's where the first way got easy, very, very easy, simple way. And this is something that anybody who has access to the server, or you can work with your admins to do, just simply set the service to restart upon failure. Take it. That's honestly the most basic of ways to do. So, and then I want to kind of step into a second simple way that actually goes along this as well, and that is using a script. Now, I will admit, not everyone is, script savvy, or you may not know everything to do with scripts, but don't worry. We are. There are easily lots of basic templated scripts out there. And this is something that we do have partially set up. So in our infrastructure, we do make sure to set the services to restart upon a failure, because, like I said, it's something simple to do. And while don't get me wrong, some sites may be using, as we'll find, some products I'll go over later, maybe using a more advanced monitoring tool. This is still something I would recommend. I would honestly not put all your eggs in one basket. So I would definitely kind of be very much so working with this whole, these simple ways, and putting these simple ways as part of your solution. Now, again, going back kind of into the second simple way is just setting a script. Now, when you, like I said, not everyone's going to, be, scripting gurus, but when you set the script, what the typical way that I recommend doing this is, I actually recommend creating what's called a batch file or a command file. And then what it's going to simply do is you set the subsequent failures to run a program, and that program is you set that file up to email certain individuals, or a distribution list, or a massive blast. I mean, there are lots of ways that running a program can really play effect. And one of the easiest ways possible is simply setting up that script to say, hey, this failed, run this program. And then you send an email, just this dummied up email that says, hey, this service failed. Please take a look at it and see what's going on. And so while it's not the most advanced, it's something very simplistic and easy that you can have with it.
Yes, Ryan, maybe after the meeting, after the podcast, we can just, maybe if anybody has any want ways to steal some of your scripts from that, just maybe they might ping you. That's what I do. I'm just the king of stealing, so I never want to write anything that someone else wrote it before. So
oh no, and that's kind of the amazing part about this is, and what's funny is you wouldn't even necessarily need to, quote unquote, steal mine. Honestly, you can simply Google script to email group on Windows service failure. Mm-hmm. By simply Googling something like that, you will get a lot of people that will put it out there. Mm-hmm. And you can search specifically PowerShell. PowerShell is kind of is starting to become the really big go-to. Or you can simply search for batch file or command file. So either one of those three are the really big ones that would work for that.
Elias says, yes, we have this set up, and then they also have a PowerShell script to ping services for ad hoc usage. So
good. Yeah, and that's good. And Elias, we'll kind of go into, there's a piece later that actually you may want to consider looking at, possibly, I know it sounds silly, actually replacing that PowerShell scripting with. So we'll show this later on here, some pieces that you can do. So before I move on, does anybody have any questions regarding this, or kind of any comments on, feedback on how they really want to, if they use this, has it worked well for them? I mean, obviously we're open to hearing, and we want to hear this from you guys. We want to work with you guys and make sure, we're, not boring you to death. And that would not be a good thing.
Yeah, I can start while everybody's kind of gathering their thoughts and typing maybe. Yeah. I can say that a lot of places that I went in and go ahead and set this up like after I joined. So I go in there and it's not set to start the service on failure, first or second failure, or any subsequent programs. So, and here, Ryan, just to kind of clarify, first failure means if the service stops, and the second time the service stops, and subsequent failures, it keeps stopping, right? Then you want to run a program, means like you want a script, like a batch file. Correct. This is where you set that up. Okay. Yeah. And then you put this in the run program here. You put your batch here, and then it's probably a batch file that you stored on the server. And it says reset fail count after 0 days and 2 minutes or whatever.
Well, and just to kind of make a note here, obviously those reset fail counts and the reset, the service after certain counts is a really big item that you typically want to honestly leave as default. The reason behind that is, your count goes into play as to how many, apologies, obviously the fun times of working from home. So, but the reset counts are a piece that I would typically recommend not really messing with too much.
Yeah.
The main reason I say that is because your counts are a piece that is going to help trigger what happens above. So for example, if you say reset your fail count after 1 day, if your service fails, in typically 1 day is a good base minimum, honestly. So if you set it to reset after 1 day, and it fails on day 1 and then it fails on day 2, obviously it's never going to get to that second failure subsequent. So that's kind of where that count goes into play. So if it fails once, it stores a count in the system of 1, and then it does the first failure restart. And if you have it, resetting the fail count after 0 days, it's going to keep that count the way it is, indefinitely. So kind of got to be aware of how potentially, how often this may hit. So a good baseline is 1 day.
Yeah. Can you also give us maybe an example of where did you use this? Like, is that like your dip server stop or HL7 server stop? And if it stopped, like what happened? Like what was the operationally, who complained and who was going up on arms about it and what happened?
Yeah.
And talk about the consequences of that a little bit.
Yeah. One of the big ones that really kind of comes down to is it comes down to a consequence of the biggest one that we had one time was dip, actually. Unbeknownst to us, one of our dip services had failed, and this was honestly, our fault. We had set almost every other service up to do, what I talked about here with restart and the run a program, but we ironically enough forgot to set up this new dip service to do so. Well, because of that, we stopped having some financial services documents being dipped in. And so, as many people are well aware of, when you deal with financial services, you're dealing with money, and when you're not helping them get those documents in to, make the money, business ain't going to be happy. So that's where these services happen. That setting this up really kind of comes into play, and why it has such a big effect. Now, one of the other pieces I do want to make a state of is for those of you that do have have noticed, and because there is a community topic about it, is thick client services, which obviously we know are kind of being transitioned away. But when a database failover happens, depending upon the way your databases are set up, if a failover happens, the thick client may go into a hung state. So, or it may stop, one or the other. And so if it stops and you don't have this set up, you could have your HL7 listener, sender, processor, a base 64. When any of those, you could have your dip, you could have auto image processing for conversions for your scan queues. You could have all those services that are running off of like a typical thick client service. They could stop and you could be nearly dead in the water, and you would never know.
Yes. So I also wanted to see from the audience if there's anybody want to comment on some of the stuff that if they have any other monitoring solutions that they have put in place and how it's worked for them. Just ping either in the chat window or just unmute yourself if you want to and talk about that. So Ryan, about this, what are some of the other things maybe you can go over? Yes, we have the restart service, and you have some. I noticed you said if it doesn't work that way, up to subsequent failures, you run a script to notify, maybe send an email to somebody or in distribution group. Can you talk about maybe some other ways, maybe some performance monitoring or any kind of reporting or something that you might have done? What are some of the other tools that you use for performance monitoring on your OnBase solution?
Yeah, so let's kind of take a next step up, and we're going to go next into kind of some of our intermediate. And one of the pieces that I actually like to use here is the Windows Performance Monitor. This is a standard piece on any Windows server, that if it's not installed, you can easily install it from the roles and features. And this is actually pretty powerful because when you install, say, an application server, okay, so you go into an application server, when you are in the WAMCon itself, um, you can actually, there is a piece to install the performance counters in all these pieces, and that's part of the Windows Performance Monitor. What this Windows Performance Monitor can do is it can monitor the processing time. So, how many, seconds and minutes and all that. It can monitor how many current users are logged in. It can monitor the RAM, some RAM usages, how many cores are being used, some of those good pieces that are nice and that you can do. Now, not everyone's going to want to obviously stare at a Windows Performance Monitor all the time. And you don't want to be having the Windows Performance Monitor running and looking at it all day long on 10 different servers. So one of the really cool things, and this is something that I found out semi-recently, is that the Windows Performance Monitor can actually write all these logs you're doing directly to a database itself.
Mm-hmm.
And
Oh,
so
the
what's
database itself. Okay.
Yeah, so what you would do is you actually create a separate database to store these logs. It's almost similar to a new feature, and I'll go into this a little deeper here in a little bit, but it's a new feature in Windows, or not Windows, sorry, OnBase Foundation, where they can write logs to what's called an SIEM, or Security Information. Oh my gosh, now I'm blanking on the acronym.
We'll call it SIM. Yes.
Yeah, we'll call it just SIM, but it's similar to that, but this is, if you don't have one. So if you write these to the logs, what's cool, or to the database, what's cool then is you can then turn around, and because of how reporting dashboards is so extremely powerful, you can actually leverage reporting dashboards to then pull all this data in, and you really start to look at it in regards to, um, over time, and seeing these things. And these specific pieces with the Windows Performance Monitor are really actually a big benefit to people. And the reason I say they're a big benefit is if you are noticing errors or issues happening in a day, and they seem quote unquote random. I mean, you can't figure it out. This actually comes as a really powerful tool, because by doing this, you are now storing all of these, this data points. And then what you can then do is you can either do the analysis yourself. So if
Like
you
in
want to,
Excel or some other database or Access or whatever,
Excel,
right?
or you can use like OnBase reporting dashboards or something like Tableau, and then you can look at it and say, okay, well, we noticed this happened at 10:52. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
well, let's go look at, between 10:45 and 11 o'clock. Let's see kind of how this works, kind of the leading up to it,
Mm-hmm.
what happened at the point, and the following down from it.
Yeah.
And you can really start to see, okay, well, hey, we noticed when this issue happened, the CPU purely spiked to 100%.
Mm-hmm.
Well, by doing that, now you can say, okay, well, now that I know the steps they did and I see what happened, I can then see if I can recreate this, which then, you're going to make first line support super happy, because they're going to be like, well, shoot, they pretty much already recreated it for me. We don't have to worry about
Yes.
fussing with that.
On a similar note, I see everybody's commenting on the chat window, and I see a couple of great ideas actually. And one of them is pretty simple. Martha says, do a nightly IS reset. And a lot of the
Mhm.
things, I think doing the nightly resets are, yes, they are key. And every OnBase solution that I worked on, every time something happens, they tell me, hey, do you guys have nightly resets for, especially for Unity client and things like that? Do you have
Oh yeah.
IIS resets set up? So that is a very good tip. Another tip that I'm hearing from Corinthia is I have a few processor notifications for dip batch failures. So these are set up in the, I believe these processor notifications set up in the config. So in the dip
Yes.
configuration itself, you can set up a processor notification within the dip configuration, and
Mhm.
then assign that notification to that dip process. And you can, I believe you need on-base distribution services enabled
Yeah.
for that.
Yeah.
You can do that. So that's also another great idea. And Randell says something really interesting. I actually never heard about this one before, so definitely want to follow up with Randell, because it says
Yeah,
we use Epic's System Pulse to monitor our OnBase solution. And I don't
that's
even
kind of an
know.
interesting option. I
Yeah,
wasn't kind of aware of that one.
I didn't even know how would something like that would look like. So I'd definitely ping you on that. And let's see a few others. Yes, Solomon says we have our app pools restarting nightly. Jessica Magic says, our IIS resets preferred over app pool recycles.
Hmm.
I don't know. Anybody has any comment on that? Is IIS reset doing a IIS reset altogether is preferred over app pool recycles? I have the way I have had in a lot of the solutions that I maintain. It's not the IIS being reset, is apples are being refreshed. So I mean, Ryan or anybody else, what do you guys have it set up as?
Well, I personally have set it up through recycles. And the reason I've done recycles is for the fact of when you do let's say you have you only have one application server. So let's kind of go on some of the, maybe a smaller location may have one application server for some reason. If you do, and you do an IIS reset, you now have terminated all connections to every single application server that you have, whether it be Unity client, mailbox importer, any typical, and things like that. And yes, just like Jeff said, app pool recycles are less disruptive. So they're easier to structure. So like for us, we currently have 2 application servers. We're actually working on we're doubling up because we're getting a lot more deployment. But we do the app pool recycles because what you can do is you can then schedule. So you say app server 1, you do a recycle on the Unity client application server at midnight. And then on application server 2, you say do it at 1 a.m. Then application server 3 at 2 a.m. Application server 4 at 3 a.m. So you spread them out. So what you're doing here is you are literally keeping your system up because you've got those other ones at a load balance state, hopefully, obviously.
Yes,
But then
that's you want the load balance too. Yes, that's kind
yes,
of like
yes,
Brad and Jeff and Angela. Yes, they also say the same thing.
yes,
Stay away
yeah,
from the IIS reset as much as possible. It seems like
yeah,
they're much more disruptive. And Andrea Boyd says if you have a load balancer, it's less of a concern. Yes,
yep.
I agree with that too. That load balancer can take care of that. Brad says recycles don't interrupt current sessions, so you don't necessarily have to stagger them. Not a bad idea though. Okay, that's
It's good because if a recycle were to kill a connection, you at least still have the other servers they can come back up on.
yeah.
So like you said there, Brad, you are right. The actual recycles don't truly terminate the connection. Now, here I can say is what you can run is if you do prefer to do an IIS reset, okay? If you do, a suggestion I would put is to put a /no force on the end of that, because by
What does
what you're
that do?
doing is by doing the no force, you are actually just simply do an IIS reset. What that's doing is it's saying, I don't care if you're connected or not, you're getting your connection terminated and I'm going to reset. Versus a IIS reset no force, what that does is it will do a reset, but it will not kill any connections. So in other words, it does the reset, and if you're still connected in, it'll stay, and then if you disconnect and come back in, you'll get now the updates.
I see.
So the IIS reset by itself can be kind of deadly to systems. So that's why I want to make sure to put out caution that everyone's kind of aware of potentially what a actual IIS reset can do to your system versus what an IIS reset no force could do to your system. So it may be a little lighter way, an easier way to do it.
Solomon says actually, so this is one other monitoring section we haven't talked about is for the HL7 outbound and inbound. Solomon says that they have an interface engine notifying them if ADT messages are queuing up on the interface side.
Yeah,
And
we have something similar to our integrators as well, and it's
yes,
not necessarily directed towards us, but yeah, we kind of have something similar to what Solomon has there.
Yeah, and it says outbound ADT messages, if not received for X amount of time, the interface engine team will automatically create a P2 ticket. I actually have this one set up in currently where I'm working on right now as well. The P2 ticket is automatically caught, and then they use
Yep.
ServiceNow, and I get a ServiceNow notification that there's a problem with that. So
Oh
Angel
yeah.
says again, we do the same. It is set up on the interface side though, so I don't know if you're using Mirth or CorePoint or Ensemble, whatever your interface engine is. It's probably one of those. I want to, before we move on to the next slide, I want to just maybe talk about personally one of the monitoring things that we put together in place
Hmm.
when we had our system configured in UC Irvine Health. One of the things that we did is we got a lot of third-party systems that are sending PDF documents. These are, I think, like these are like crisp PDF images. They're not
Yep.
scanned images. They're high-resolution PDFs that they come in, and they come in with an index file and an image file, and we dip them like every 5 minutes. And what we were seeing is there was this one system, and we did not notice one time that for 3 days their files were accumulating like crazy.
Wow.
They were 2,000 files, 2,000, 2,500 files in there. And interestingly enough, these are things that people need in Epic. And then
Hmm.
we got a ticket saying, hey, I'm scanning or sending results from whatever system, and they're not showing up in Epic. And I got that ticket. Once I got the ticket and I start looking at it, and I don't see any documents in OnBase for
Yeah.
that. And I started looking around, and I started checking dip processes one by one. When I checked one of the dip processes, uh, I started going through the folders, and I go in there and I see it like 2,500 files sitting out there waiting to be dipped.
Yeah. Yeah. It's
So,
crazy.
and we start, I mean, I didn't want to take anything else. I just restarted the dip process and keep going. And I just
Hmm.
restarted the service, and it took care of it right away.
Yeah.
But then we went back, and I actually didn't write it myself because in UC Irvine, it's very structured, very big healthcare organization. They have resources to do this. So I went to talk to one of the server guys. Hey, can you give me, or if you have already one, or monitoring script that if I tell you what the UNC path is, and you can run a monitoring script here, like if there is any time there's more than 200 files in this folder, then just cut a ticket to me or send a notification.
Mm.
He's like, yeah, no problem. He did it in like less than an hour.
Oh yeah.
So every time there is more than 200 files in that folder, I automatically get a P3 ticket. So
Hmm.
and that way I'm notified. So, and then that's the other thing. Like, you don't have to do everything yourself. I understand, like, a lot of organizations, if you're like a one-man show and there's nobody helping you, that's fine. But if you're working for a large organization and you have the resources, make sure you use those resources. And there's a lot of help out there.
Oh
Um,
yeah.
and like, yeah, so Angel says they use Ensemble, but they have the same setup for HL7 stuff. And Brian McCree says, does anyone have a way to monitor OnBase scheduler management sweeps? We have sweeps set up to run every 5 minutes. I'd like to be notified if the sweep isn't processing.
So I think there are definitely ways to do that. A lot of it, to your question there, Brian, honestly, really kind of comes down to how you want to structure that, monitor. What I mean by that is you can run I could easily create a PowerShell script similar to exactly what Adiz just said there of, saying if this folder and has a PDF files in it, and the amount of PDF files are greater than X number, then do this. That honestly, I've actually got scripts that I've got set up. I could create that in a single line and have it run. So that is actually, that's one way. Or you could honestly go at the database level I mean, you could go into the OnBase database and work with what the data is in there. So honestly there, Brian, this, this kind of may be something, and, I'll put this here right now. A lot of these items regarding some of these monitors, I'll put the plug here, is if anybody wants to, there is a Discord server. It's an unofficial Highland one, or unofficial OnBase one, that it's not, run by Highland. It's actually run by, I'm one of the monitors myself, me and Frank Medina, we and a handful of others. This may be a good one for, if you want to kind of ping it off other people. And we don't have actually a lot of healthcare people on this Discord chat server. It's like basically what it is it is a live chatting application. It's primarily meant for like games, but we've been able to set it up for, obviously the way, be good for us on base. And I will make sure to get a link set up here, and I'll try to get a link before we kill this podcast here. But in general, though, reasons is there's kind of different ways to approach it. So I think it would be one of those you may want that we kind of have to understand a little more of how you want to monitor it. So, and then Brad, I see you mentioned there about script to check the oldest file in the folder. That's a good way. I mean, count is a good way. Oldest file is a good way.
And then the scheduler management piece, to answer Brian's question, you can put the notification on the dip level. So even though you've put or not put anything in the schedule level, you can put it in the dip level. If that dip process fails, it doesn't have to be on the scheduler management, because what the scheduler does is just runs it every 5-10 minutes or whatever, right? But if the dip process fails, you can put your notification in the dip process, and then you have to make sure your distribution service is up and running. So
that's the caveat to it. Yep. Yeah. If the distribution service goes down, you ain't going to get notified.
Yeah. And the other thing for that is, just to be honest with you, that's one of the things that's been great about Highland support. When I don't know how to do something, I just call support. And these guys, they do it there all the time. I do it like maybe once every 3 years. So, so I call support and have somebody walk me through it. And as long as you're just savvy enough to navigate it, they'll either send you like a little blurb about how to do it on your own, or they'll send you a screenshot of it. There were times that I was able to get them do it for me too, like some of the support things, but it's more, I think the way, like right now, especially now the last couple of years, Highland support works is they want people to have more autonomy over their systems. They want Highland wants their customers to be self-sufficient. And from that perspective, I think they encourage for us to do the work, but they just provide guidance. So that kind of gets me to that, like a similar topic. So just maybe for this topic, or just kind of in general, like, have you anybody asked for ideas or guidance from Highland support in terms of any type of performance monitoring or kind of tools like that? Have you heard anything, any updates from them during your discussions around that? Anybody want to share any thoughts of that? Put that in the chat window, please.
Yeah, and I'll kind of give mine while people kind of put their items together. Is, it really is a hit or miss type of discussion. It really is. As Brad said, most of first line of support, honestly, that I've experienced has been really hands off. Because don't get me wrong, I understand why. It's primarily because, well, this is your system. If we put this recommendation out there, we could be liable. It's all that legality stuff, which I mean, don't get me wrong, I understand. And that, honestly, in my opinion, is kind of why, while some items, and that's with first line support, would be okay to ask them, but I would say if you do get pushback, that's where honestly you can kind of come to, maybe if that doesn't work, posting community. Put it out there that, hey, I'm trying to figure out how to monitor this, or I'm trying to figure out a script to do this. Don't hesitate to put it out there on community. I know a lot of people are hesitant because of all the changes and all the, notifications or the issues with, making sure you're, seeing this. You can do it that way. There are just kind of a lot of good ones. And Martha actually said here, the OnBase system admin recertification gives really good guidance on this. Yes, I will bounce off that one there with you, Martha, is yes, when I did my recertification, I did mine through the training site. But I will tell you, those are your good times to be able to ping some of that stuff off of some of the Highland people, because at that point, they're not first line support, so they can't really say something, but obviously they're not services, so they may or may not be true absolute extreme gurus on it. So
Yes.
but all right.
I know we have a few more minutes. Do you have a few more slides to go?
Yeah, I'll go through these next ones kind of, because I've already kind of touched on them a little bit here. The next one's kind of reporting dashboards. This one is, obviously if you have reporting dashboards and are licensed for it, or if you have report services, just note, obviously report services, it has been deprecated as of OnBase 18, it's still in 18, but OnBase Foundation EP1 is deprecated, so you won't be able to use it there. But just kind of one where there is data sets for the distribution service. There's lots of ways that if you've found a way to develop a SQL script to check all this stuff, to check something, you can easily put that SQL script into a dashboard and have the dashboard up, and the dashboard could refresh every X amount of time. So the reporting dashboards can really become a powerful tool, and that's also why I mentioned them earlier, was with the Windows Performance Monitor, is because you can use something like the dashboards to be able to pull in those, those nitty-gritty details that would really honestly help with some of your monitoring. And kind of bouncing right off dashboards, and that is actually, another one similar is called Tableau. Now, obviously, Tableau is a licensed software as well, because you may need a server to feed it the data, or Tableau can connect to third-party databases. But just in general, the only downfall to Tableau is it does not have some of those data sets that, say, the reporting dashboards has built already into it. So Tableau is a pure from scratch type of design, versus if you have dashboards, it is you typically can pull it from the data sets they've already got.
What kind of data do you put in Tableau in this circumstance?
Data could be anything from monitoring how many emails are needing to be sent out from the distribution server or service, excuse me. So if you notice, you can say a query that says, if the results are greater than 50, then send out an email. And then you can send out, set different pieces like that. And Jeff actually asked a point here. If I understand that Highland is doing beta work to funnel performance monitor data into reporting dashboards, that in a way, from what I understand, and I'm not obviously in tune to what all they're doing, but I have not heard too much about that, to be honest with you. I know they're talking, they've had internal talks, and I've heard internal discussions about making dashboards into more of a true monitoring solution. However, there basically is no ETA on it. So that's kind of where dashboards is nice if you want it at that point in time, but it does not send notifications out. So that's kind of—
I can check with Highland and see where they are with some of those reporting dashboards. I did download, they're pretty useful. I did download the dashboards for just regular scanning activity and workflow activity. By the way, you can buy dashboards from Highland, but let me tell you this too, they have a free basic dashboard sample that you can obtain from your Highland first line support by simply putting in a support ticket. I want to mention that about the dashboards. So let's say you need a simple dashboard. Hey, I want to see who's scanning from what scan queue, how many documents they scan queue, how many documents they scan in a scan queue, broken down by location. And want to see the turnaround time, how long they take to scan or index each document. So this is like a simple type of report. These reports, you can actually go, all you have to do is just go to Highland support and then file a ticket, say, can you guys give me a download of the sample dashboards from community? And they'll put it a zip file out for you, and then they'll send it to you. You can download it and use it. But also, Highland has more like a full service kind of dashboard thing where you tell them, because these are all my dashboards needs, I need somebody to come and help me to build them. Then they will build it for you. they will write SQL if they need to, or whatever that needs to be done to get you that. So that's kind of like a more full service professional services engagement. But I do find the free ones that are very useful because they give you the also all the data connectors and everything as
Yep.
well that comes with it. And all you have to do once your data connectors are happening, all you have to do rest of it is drag and drop and configure your controls on that one.
Yeah, and I will agree with that. And actually, Martha brought up a very good point. Is there is a webinar video out there on community called "What Every OnBase Admin Needs to Know." I agree with Martha. Actually, that's a very good video to watch. I was quite impressed with all the points that they brought up there, specifically, like you said there, Martha, regarding maintenance. So that was a good point. So I want to make sure to kind of I want to touch base on a couple more pieces here real quick.
Okay.
One of the things that happens in EP and Foundation is they gave the capability to send things like diagnostic logs. So if you're running your diagnostic, the diagnostic console as a Windows service instead of just running it, by yourself and it's only running when you load it, you can send it to a SIM or a security information and event management system. Examples of this is something like Splunk. Splunk is one that's really popular out there. And what this really allows you to do is once you send it over there, Splunk ingests these live. And you can set up dashboards that pull in all these different metadatas and details to the server and all that. So they're good with that piece. I can't get into too much detail. I haven't actually implemented it, but I do know we are going to be going to EP3 once it gets out. There are some bug fixes, unfortunately, we have to go to it for. But I know this is something I'm looking forward to being able to do because I'd love to start doing some of these diagnostic logs with it. But there is one last one, and this is the one that I really want to kind of end this at a strong point on, and that is just simply, yes, Brad, regarding EP3, the current rumor mill is basically, I think it's within the first full week of April is a rumor that I heard. I can't say that with 100% certainty. Please don't quote me on that. I do not want to be held responsible. But I've heard that early Q2 here, or is it Q3? I never know which it is.
Yeah, I don't know. Maybe if there's somebody from Highland on the line, they can help us clarify that.
Hey, I'm fine with it if Highland wants to give us a good date here.
Yes,
me,
I don't know. I've been scouting the names. I've been checking out the names. Who's there in terms of if I remember any familiar names from Highland. But if they have anybody from Highland on the line, so please feel free to chime in.
Yeah, well, and this is the one that I really want to hit strong and home with is using server monitoring tools. Like, for example, you have Spiceworks is a really big known name for server monitoring. SolarWinds is another one. However, one that actually Carl uses is called Zabbix. Now, what's funny about Zabbix is it is not your typical server monitoring software. It is open source. And so for those of you that do not know what open source is, basically it is, in a manner of speaking, free to anyone who wants to use it, and you can take the code and things and help, maybe manipulate it a little bit for your own benefit to help you with some of your monitoring. Now, obviously, there are certain guidelines and such around it. There always are. But I will say, actually, these are the tools that combine all these other things that I've talked about into one solution. So I'm going to give a very good example of this, and this is something that we are working on implementing. We haven't finished yet. We are working on it. We have Zabbix on all of our OnBase servers. So anytime a service stops that is set up as automatic, it will notify us if it stops. And then if it tries to restart and comes back up, it'll notify us that it restarted and it's back up and running. Or if a server has rebooted, the notification can be sent out that this server is down. And then if it comes back up, it can say, oh, hey, never mind, sorry, it's up, you're green, you're good to go. But one extremely amazing piece that I'm super, super excited to be able to look forward to with Zabbix is logic, scripting logic. And what I mean by that is this. So one of the biggest problems with database failovers is thick client services tend to fail. They tend to hang. One of the amazing tools that you can do with Zabbix is you can say, if database server 1, like it knows which one's the primary, if database server 1 and database server 2 are clustered, it says if database server 1 fails, then what you need to do is you need to run this script to restart all of these different thick client services. And so that's all automatic on the back end. There is nothing you have to handle at that point. Now, obviously, you can put in built-in alert monitor, alerting for that, notifications, just so you're aware. But that's one really cool thing. But the other one that happens, and this is where services that are not necessarily as HA, so high availability, as they are. So, for example, HL7 listener. As everyone knows, you don't want to be running 2 HL7 listeners at the exact same time. It can really mess things up. Well, one of the really, really cool things that you can set up with Zabbix is you can set it up, and again, I'm pretty sure this is with the others too, but you can set it up so that it's saying if this specific HL7 listener fails on server 1 and it doesn't come back up after 10 minutes, start automatically the HL7 listener on server 2. So one of the things that Carl has is we actually have a load balancer set up in front of our 2 HL7 listener, basically our processing servers, so that when the HL7 message is sent to the load balancer, it goes to the only one service that's up. And so what it's doing is this whole Zabbix logic is allowing us to stay as highly available as possible. And I will tell you, that is something I cannot wait for, because being, like, oh, well, we had a recent where they had to fail over our database server because they're installing some updates. Well, my coworker and I had to be, one of us had to be on because we obviously had to restart the services. So what this does is it actually, not 100%, but it almost removes us from that necessity. And that's why these, monitoring tools like Zabbix, SolarWinds, Spiceworks, that's where those take everything that I've already set up. And I'm not saying you don't have to, don't set it up as automatically restart, but it takes everything that I've said here, puts it all into one fell swoop package, and really gives you a powerful, powerful setup to work with.
All right. All right. We are, we have a Q&A.
We sort of have already.
I know we're a little going over time, but I think we want to take maybe 1 or 2 questions if anybody want to ask questions.
Feel free.
Just for the sake of the time here. I know we've had somewhat interaction setting with IM, but if there are any questions, if anybody want to type it in, or if you want to ask it in person, either way is fine. One of the things when people are maybe asking, gathering their thoughts around, I wanted to ask you, Ryan, if you could tell us, what are some of the, in general, this is one of the things I always ask to everybody who works in OnBase, and I do hear different answers. As the person who comes in the morning, you sit down at your desk, and it's 8:15 in the morning, and you open up your computer, you log in. What are some of the first things that you check? What do you look at? Do you
honestly? I'll be completely honest. A lot of the things that I check is the email. The main reason behind this is because of because we have implemented these monitoring solutions. They are they send us notifications. I have all those notifications filtered, and I have certain checks. So, like, for example, one of the extremely good benefits that having Office 365 and your Exchange in the cloud is you can tie Microsoft Flow to, or what's now called Power Automate, to your email server and in your email inbox. And you can basically say, if an email for this specific type of an error or check comes into play and it happens, then do this. And by doing that, you can send a text message to me if it's out of hours. But when I go in for the morning, then I'm seeing the stuff that wasn't necessarily having to be done overnight, but I do need to at least take a look at it and say, okay, I got the alert. Okay, a service stop. Mm-hmm. oh, nope, it's back up. Okay, we're good. It's back up. I can see, and then I can really kind of evaluate what items I need to take care of.
So if you have your monitoring set up correctly, all you look at is your email and be done.
It really is. It is. Or, there are other options, other things that, have been done. Something, another piece that I'm kind of looking forward to doing is using Microsoft Power Automate to automatically every day create Microsoft Planner tasks, little cards for me to perform, or you can use it with, I just forgot the other one. Yep, nope, brain. That's okay. But the other software that's out there,
for me, for example, yes, obviously I check email, but because of and obviously it depends on each site too, what are some of the sensitivities are, especially if you're in a shop that has an Epic EMR or something like that. One of the first things that I check is, especially right now in UC Irvine, we do have a lot of processes that are being dipped on every 5 minutes or so. So yes, we do check things, but I go in the morning and look at those dip folders and make sure that there's only not more than a few documents at any given time, because I got 5-minute timer on those things. So maybe tops 10, 15, but if I see 30, 40, 80 documents in there, that means there's something wrong. That's one of the things I check. I check my dip folders. And also, yes, I do have some emails too that are automatically consumes files, and they are processed. After they are processed, I do get a notification for those, but they're kind of random. The files can be coming anytime, so I don't have a way exactly when the notification will say. And also, Solomon says we are very ticket driven, so I think he's also looking at the tickets as well. So I do look at that. I do check mainly the dip file, and I do log into Epic and kind of look at certain things, make sure everything is working. That's one of the other things I look at. In terms of the financial area, we do have a lot of bank integration, so we do automatic dips for the bank feeds. So I do check those as well. So Brad says, with everything else pretty well automated, I check status not found batches. Yes, that's a really good one.
Oh yeah.
Yes, not status not found batches, process logs, and a few things we haven't put good monitoring on. Yes, those are great suggestions. Thank you, Brad. Ryan, I want to really thank you very much today. We guys see Ryan's email, Ryan Wakefield, ryan.wakefield@carl.com is his email. And we went a little over time today. It was our first podcast, and we do appreciate everybody's time at this moment.
Absolutely.
We will wrap up the podcast, and you guys have a safe and healthy rest of the week and a weekend. God bless all of you. Thank you.
And the other thing I will say real quick is, if anybody wants to, if you want to hear future topics, don't hesitate to send them on out to me. Deez and I are going to start parsing through a lot of these, and hopefully we'll get some other good topics going. And obviously, don't hesitate to say any of them. If you want to say, hey, we'd love to have an interview, we'd love to see an interview with Highland product owner over X. I mean, we're not opposed to trying to do it. So any ideas or any feedback you can provide from today's episode, we would love to hear it. We will take nothing against us, because this was our first time, so it's going to be an interesting one as we keep going. So, but thanks again. I echo off of these here. Thank you to everyone. Appreciate the time, and looking forward to making many more of these.
All right. Bye-bye, guys. Take care.
Thanks, everyone. Bye-bye.